Who you are and what you do is because of why you're here. In today's episode, we're going to talk about identifying the right tools and how that all fits into aligning everything that you do with your purpose so that you can be the leader we all need you to be everywhere you go. So with that, here's our conversation on identifying the right tools.
So welcome to the podcast today. Luke and I are going to be talking about identifying the right tools. A tool simply in this conversation in terms of fulfilling your purpose and being the valued leader that we all need you to be is really simply anything that you use to fulfill your purpose with. So it could be anything. And as we walk through the lead framework with those that we lead, there's a bunch of exercises that we do. There's a bunch of categories that we go through to really help you understand what are the tools that you have. Because guaranteed, just like the rest of us, you're using things that are hindering you from fulfilling your purpose, and you're using things that are actually helping you. But until you lay all those things out on the table and measure them against your purpose and fulfilling it, you don't really know if you're just spinning your wheels, if you're following a distraction, as we talked about in the opportunities episode. So really, that's what we want to talk to you today about is basically, here's the main premise. Who you are and what you do is because of why you're here. So if who you're being and what you're doing isn't helping you fulfill your purpose, then you're going to be devalued at the end of the day.
I think you hit on, two interesting things that I think are important. The first one being that anything can be a tool, but really the real value of this comes in figuring out which ones are actually going to help you. You can use anything as a tool, but I think this is all about figuring out which ones are going to be the most effective. And there are definitely going to be a few, key tools that you use over and over and over again, and that's not a bad thing. Really, the majority of the work is just finding which one of those tools you need, which ones work best, and then just continuing to use those and also refine your skill in using those tools. So we're talking about things like time, money, a book, a podcast, speaking, a website, a business, anything that you can use to help fulfill your purpose in other people's lives. So, among those things, there's going to be specific ones that really work for you, and figuring out which one of those tools really is effective in helping fulfill your purpose is the key to establishing really what you should be doing with your time. A lot of people choose what they want to do before they know what's going to help them fulfill their purpose, and that, causes them to waste a lot of time. And the second thing that you said is who you are is because of why you're here. And a lot of people just become somebody, create an identity for themselves because it's who they want to be. But, the answer to this is not even just being yourself, because you might not even know who that really is. The key is to take a look at why you're here and then figure out who you need to be to fulfill that. Well,
and within that, you can't really assess who you are until you know why you're here. Because, at the end of the day, every single person that we have ever walked through, or company, or even community, to help them understand why they're here, all of a sudden, as soon as they get that clarity, it's like, oh, now we know why we're really great at this stuff and we're really bad at this stuff, or why we have these things and why we don't have these things, because you don't need certain things to fulfill your purpose, and you need things to fulfill your purpose. So in that, until you know why you're here, you can't truly assess who you are and what you should be doing, just like you said. So there's a couple things that I think we should dig into. Why don't we do that? A few of the exercises that we actually lead people through to give people a better understanding of the kind of things that they should be looking at. So So there's 5 key categories that we help people categorize the tools that they would need to assess in their life. So those 5 categories are people. Who are the people in your life? Who are the people that you need to actually fulfill your purpose? Who has been there in the past? Who is there currently? Who do you think you're going to need in the future? Those are core relationships, be it personally or professionally or as a company, in terms of looking at, well, who do you need on your team in order to be able to fulfill this purpose? Who do you need in your community? What kinds of businesses do you need? What kinds of, business development? What kind of development, land development? All of those things can be assessed because they're all what's in relation to why you're here. So people are key in that. Next, as you said, time and money. How are you spending your time? How are you spending your money, both as an individual, as a company, as a family, as a community, and as a country? Like, how are we actually using the resources that we have?
Yeah, well, and I think that raises an interesting point. I'm not sure how the best way to explain this is, but it's almost like there's different categories. So, there's tools like money and time and, any other kind of resources that you have. And then there's also tools such as a blog, a business, a book, speaking event, anything like that. And it takes the time and money and resources to make that book, speaking event, blog, website, business happen. And so really the kind of main basic categories of time and money and resources and people, I think that's where it starts. And then you need to answer the questions of how am I using my time? And that's what leads into, I'm using it to, run this business, write this book, do whatever I'm doing. And that's really how you get, really clear insight as to what you're really doing and what's really working.
Yeah. So in that, one of the key things you can do is just take a look at your calendar, or even, at the end of the day, go, how did I spend my day? How did we spend our day this week, or our week this week, to assess it and go, did that actually help me fulfill my purpose or not? Did that actually help us as a company fulfill our purpose or not? How and why, or why not? Same with the money. Take a look at your bank account. Take a look at your expense sheet, your financials, and go, how's the money that we're spending actually helping us fulfill our purpose? And the money that we're getting back, the profit, how are we investing that to actually do that with more and more impact?
Right. And I think that that's really important, because when you take a look at how you're spending your time and how you're spending your money, it's not just about, okay, well, I can spend less money here and I can spend less time here. It's not about just tightening up your resources and, streamlining. That's good. But what this is really about is taking money and time and resources that you're allocating to certain areas and moving them to areas that, you should be putting them into. So it's not about, trying to figure out how you can tighten up how you spend your day and how you spend your money. It's really just about figuring out what you're spending it on now and where you should actually be putting it. And maybe it is where you should be spending it now.
And it all has to do with, is it helping you fulfill your purpose or not? Because you're absolutely right. In one of the other courses that we teach, which is called the Crisis Code, that's what it's all about, is how do you thrive through a crisis? Because we've seen so many times a company or a person or a community gets into a crisis, or a family, they're in crisis, and immediately they start to streamline stuff. They start to cut things out to survive that crisis. But they may be cutting out things that are vitally important for them to be able to actually thrive through that crisis and get through the other side in a better place than they were when they started that crisis. So many times people, companies lay off people, and that's the last thing they should be doing. Maybe it's the thing that they should be doing, but you don't know that until you go, why are we here, and how are we vulnerable in that? What do we actually need to be able to fulfill on this purpose? And don't get rid of those things. Get rid of the things that are actually hindering you. But until you know why you're here, you can't actually assess what you're doing, which is why in this holy framework, we start with why and end with what, because that's the natural progression. The other thing that you pointed out here is, so there's people, there's time, there's money, there's also methods and materials. So when you look at your job, the education that you're going for, anything that you can look at in terms of a way of doing something, that would be classified as a method. Look at how you're doing things. Is how you're doing it actually fulfilling your purpose or not? What is the best methodology, way to actually go about doing this? And that takes time to learn.
The three parts of this are clarify your purpose, align all you do to your purpose, and lead from your purpose. So really what we're focusing on in this step is aligning your whole life to why you're here. Now, you're doing all three of these steps throughout the entire thing, but really what we're trying to focus on here is aligning your life and everything you're doing to why you're here so that it can actually have an impact.
Yeah, and aligning the life of your company, the life of your family, your country, your community, all of that, to take a look at that. And the interesting thing and through this is that as you clarify your purpose, you start to naturally align things that you're doing to fulfill it. And then as you step out to lead in that, you gain more clarity. Therefore, you have more information to be able to align more and then step out as a greater valued leader in the places where you actually have opportunity to lead. So it is cyclical in that it feeds itself as a perfect system in that sense. And that's just simply a methodology, just like I said, right? It's just a way of doing something. Hey, I'm gaining clarity. I'm going to align with that clarity and then step out and lead and learn some more and gain deeper clarity. And it's cyclical that way. And then in terms of materials, it's really just like, what is the stuff that you have? What is the stuff of life, the stuff of business, the things that you have? How do you use those things to actually fulfill your purpose? And which things, although they may be cool to have, they're actually getting in your way and you don't actually need them at the end of the day.
It's not just the things that you already have, but the things that you want to have. So, the things that you plan on buying, the things that you plan on obtaining in the future, it's just, important to make sure that those are actually necessary and the right tools to have.
Yeah, and in terms of a business, in terms of methodology and materials, there's products and services that we all have. That's a way of going about answering the need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I mean, as an author too, specifically, there's been a lot of books that I've wanted to write, and I've really had to, because there's the initial excitement of, coming up with a new book, and you got the title and the characters and the plot line and the cover, and you're really excited to write it because it's a really cool new story. But then you have to just kind of take a step back and check to make sure if that book is actually, the right tool, if that's the book that you should be writing right now. And a lot of times I've actually realized that the answer was no. The book wasn't what I should be writing at that point.
Hearing you say that, there is one of the reasons why I'm so excited that, you being younger, you're getting this stuff now, because there's so much. And for our listeners who are listening, who are older, we've gone through so much stuff and look back in our life and we go, yeah, that was a waste of time. Legitimately, it was a waste of time. Did I learn something from it? Can I glean something and bring it forward into my life? Absolutely. But there are things that I look at in my own life, acting as an example, and go, there's a ton of skills that I got, tons of ways to go about doing things that I use every single day now. But legitimately, when I look at that, I go, for me, acting wasn't the right tool because it was actually getting in my way in terms of being able to do what I do now. I could have learned all of those things doing what I do now way back then, 20 years ago or so, and actually been fulfilling my purpose as I did it, as opposed to being distracted by that good tool, but it wasn't the right tool for me.
Right. Well, and you raise an interesting point, because when it comes to tools, these are sort of unique in the fact that there are things that can happen to you in your life and they will feel like a mistake, even though you may have learned something. But the truth is, it wasn't your responsibility. It's not like you asked for it to happen. So it's not really on you. When it comes to tools, the way you're spending your money, your time, the businesses that you decide to run, whatever you decide to do with your life, whatever tools you decide to pursue, those are your choices. So any mistakes within that is going to be on you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And those are the life lessons that we all have to go through and walk through and grapple with and understand and embrace to learn to not make those mistakes again,
Right.
or to understand the successes and actually duplicate those and replicate those. Right. One of the other things that I think is kind of interesting to look at in terms of this conversation of what and who is your personality. So there's tons of personality tests out there. And the interesting thing is I did a ton of that stuff when I was younger because I was really interested in who I was and why I was here. But it wasn't until I actually figured out my purpose and why I was here that all of that stuff had context.
Right. Well, and that goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. Really, who you are is not, it's not like you can just tell yourself, oh, I'm just going to be me, because at the end of the day, you probably don't even really know who that is, because none of us do. None of us know exactly who we are because there's no standard to measure that by. So, yeah, you can't just expect that you know who you really are, because until you know why you're here, what your purpose is, you don't know how to act, and you don't know how to really, you don't know what personality you should even have, and you don't know what kind of life you should be living, and you don't know what kind of person you should be striving to become. So without that standard to reach for, you're really just deciding what you want to be.
I think you don't actually get to understand. This is just my own personal experience. And, you know, if I'm honest, what I've seen everyone else go through as they've understood their purpose and clarified it, you don't really understand who you are. You have ideas about who you are because there's things you're like, yeah, that really aligns with me. But you don't really understand it until you know why you're here. And then it starts to click and go, oh, that's why that resonates with me. Because if I wasn't interested in that, if I didn't have a desire to do that, if I wasn't good at these particular things, I would never be able to fulfill my purpose. And within that, this is why I'm not good at these things, because they have nothing to do with me actually fulfilling my purpose. And you extend that to a family, a company, and a community. There are things that companies are great at, and there's things that some companies are not. And it's amazing that we've all been fed this lie that we have to be all things to all people. And that's death to you, because you can't be. It's a complete lie. You can be who you're meant to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing because of why you're here, with the select people that need and want your help. That's the key in terms of being a leader or being a company, you know, leading as a company, contributing to society, is really understanding why you're here and then not getting distracted with all the stuff that seems good and actually is good work. There's a difference between doing good work and doing the right work. And I can't remember if we talked about this in the opportunities episode, but I'll say it again because it's worth saying again, is that good isn't always great. Great isn't always right, but right is always good and great. When you're doing the right thing, it's going to be good work. It's going to be great because it's right. But so easily we get distracted by what's good, by what's great, and we miss what's right. And then at the end of the day, we go, why am I still feeling devalued, or why am I still unsatisfied?
Well, and that goes back to the personality stuff, because the way that we define who we are is the hobbies that we enjoy, the things that we do on a daily basis, our favorite color, our favorite anything. And so really what those are, they're just labels that we're using to describe ourselves. There's no definition to describe who you are. Like, that's just the truth. There's no way to define who you actually are. We just use labels to help us explain ourselves. And the thing about those labels is they become dangerous when we start to live into them. You know, for example, I'm an optimist, I'm a pessimist. And so, you know, we take those labels, sometimes we take them too far, and we live into that and, you know, try to make them into us.
They become an identity.
Right. And so we pursue that even to the detriment of ourselves and those around us.
Well, and you're exactly right. And we talk about this in this particular module in the lead framework. And we call them tags. Tags like the labels that you wear. Some of them help you, some of them hinder you. And the key thing, so just to add to what you said, is we are defined by our purpose. That's what gives us definition. Why you're here gives you definition. Labels and all of those things, like I have blonde hair, I have blue eyes, I like purple, whatever it is. I like blue, by the way. Those things just explain something about us. And those things can change over time. And that's the other key thing in this whole conversation of tools is tools can come and go because they're based on not only why you're here, but also the opportunities that you have, which again is why we place it at the end, because you can't really understand the tools you need until you know why you're here and where you're being called to fulfill your purpose, your opportunities.
Yeah, interestingly enough, a vast majority of people, at least that I've observed, start at the end. They start with choosing which job that they want, or choosing how they're going to spend their money, how they're going to make their money, how they're going to spend their time. And it just really doesn't work because you're trying to take puzzle pieces and put them together without knowing what picture you're trying to make.
Yes, that's exactly right. And one of the things, like we can use this as an example. You're going to renovate your house, right? And you're like, okay, what options do I have? You start picking out colors right away. And, do we need granites or all of these things? But you don't even know what the space is supposed to do for you. You don't even know why you need that space to function the way you need it. So until you understand, how your kitchen helps you, and this may seem absurd, but I want you to think about it for a second. Look at your house. How is it set up? Is it actually helping you fulfill your purpose or not? But immediately, hey, I need to redo this room. What color should I paint it? Well, you can't answer that question until you know why you're here. I challenge you to look at it like that. Figure out your purpose. Go through our course. Figure it out. We even have a free version of it that you can start and do the first module and figure out why you're here. And then look at your house as an exercise and go, does this house help me fulfill that purpose? It's a really cool exercise. It's so simple, but it'll give you so much insight into how you're living your life or your business. Figure out why you're here as a business and then look at how your business is running, how you've set it up, how you organize your team, how you operate your business. It's incredibly insightful just to even have that one small piece to then take a look at the whole picture and take a look at what you're doing. Now you have an anchor. And with that anchor, now you can figure out where you need to sail.
The other part of this module is your lead position. And I think this goes back to all the personality stuff and who you are, because there's 3 lead positions, and that's the visionary, commander, and implementer. And everybody is one of these 3 things. And now it's really up to you to answer which one of those 3 you think you are. And it's definitely much easier to answer that if you know your purpose. But, everybody is one of those 3, and that is, again, a way to help explain who you are. Now, that's not who you are. Who you are is not a commander, a visionary, or an implementer. You just are. It really is just another tool, and it's really mostly for yourself and for other people to understand how you operate, because that's really going to help clarify a lot of why you do things the way and there's also the influencer, and the influencer is what any one of those 3 things becomes when they step out of position and try to be something that they're not. And so the influencer really just tries to manipulate and control and get their own agenda. So the influencer is somebody who has walked away from why they're here and has invented a different purpose that they want to live for. They have an agenda and they're out to accomplish it. So really, and it's a really dangerous place to be. And I think the thing that often leads people there is trying to create an identity, personality, trying to define who they are, and it's really not who they are, and then going after it. And because their purpose, whether they know it or not, doesn't align with who they're trying to be, they kind of kick their purpose out the window, and they try to align everything to who they think they are. But the truth is that's not who they are. And so they're really fighting against gravity, trying to become this person and convince themselves and everybody else that that is the person they are.
One of the things that I've seen over the years in terms of business development is so many entrepreneurs, people, businesses get this idea of a great product, and then they structure everything else around this product, but that's them starting at the end, right? Early on, when I was first understanding how all of this should come together, I used this image of planting a tree upside down. And a lot of businesses do that. They have the product at the top of the tree, and they put the tree upside down in the ground, and they try to build and plant this business on the tool, on the product or the service. And then imagine a tree upside down, how much water, how much resources have to go to keep that tree alive. That's why businesses fail. That's why they struggle. That's why they don't have the impact that they could have, simply because they've put the cart before the horse, whatever analogy you want to use. They've planted that tree upside down because they've focused on the product first. The question is, we all have those ideas, like you said about the book. Is this the right product that helps me fulfill my purpose? If not, let it go.
Right. Well, and the reason for that is because, like you said, you can't base the business on the product. You can't base your life on a tool or what. So really, the business is based off of why you're here. And that's based off of people have a need and you meeting it. And that's what the product can help you do. So it's really not about the product. It's about people having a need, and your purpose is to answer that need. And the way you do it is through many different products. Maybe you only have one, but the truth is there can be many, many different products. So it's not like you just have one miracle product and then you build a business selling it. That's how a lot of business models work, and maybe it can be successful financially, but in the long run, it's really not having the impact that it should. And the interesting thing, it might sound counterproductive, but the only way to really know what tools you need is not by sitting down, grabbing a pencil and a paper and making a list of what you think you need. Because very rarely, if ever, are you actually going to get it all right. What you need to do is, instead of packing up your tools and going to the job site, you actually have to go to the job site, find out what you're doing, and by doing that, you'll know what tools you need. So really, all that to say, you have to go out and fulfill your purpose, and you're probably going to fail a few times, but by doing that, you're really going to know what tools you need to succeed.
Well, and you're also going to, you're going to continue to fail. Let's just be honest, right? But you're going to fail less and less the more you understand what tools you need and where your opportunities actually are. Because ultimately, where your opportunities are, as you said earlier, you're going to get a core set of tools that work everywhere that you are. Right? Like, as an example, the lead framework that we're walking through right now didn't always have the scope that it had. Well, let me rephrase that. It always had the scope that it had. I just didn't understand it, all those years ago. I was looking at it from one perspective. And as I started to develop it and understand what it could be, then all of a sudden, all these other opportunities, like for people, for businesses, for communities, for companies, all of these things started to come out because I realized this one tool can help in all those areas because they all have the same need. So then that core tool came out, and it works in every single place because it's built and meant to do that.
Right. Yeah, you don't need a different tool to fill the same need if it's going to work.
Exactly. That's exactly right. But as you said earlier as well, There may be other products and services that you develop because there's a different aspect of the need that this is a better tool for, right? Like, to use your analogy, there's different kinds of hammers for different types of jobs. The need is the same. I got to hammer something in, but it depends on what I'm hammering in and what type of material I'm hammering it into determines the kind of hammer I need, right? But it's still a hammer at the end of the day. It's just a different kind of hammer, still answering the same need in a different opportunity. So that sums up the LEAD framework. It starts with clarifying your purpose, then really discerning what your vision is, where you're leading to. So why you're here, where you're actually calling others to go. Then realizing the dream. What are you inviting others into in terms of the big picture? Then how do you do that? How do you go about doing that? That's your mission. How do you actually go about answering this need in people's lives? As we explored, there's 3 steps that each of us use in order to do that. The challenge is to figure out what those 3 steps are. Then from there, it's really knowing your value, what you bring to the table, and what gets in your way and tries to devalue you along the way. Then, where are you actually being called to do this? That's your opportunities, and those change over time. Some of them are going to be there for your entire life, be it as a person, as a company, as a community. You're always going to have certain opportunities there. Opportunities come and go, though, right? So you're going to have new opportunities come and opportunities are going to fade away, even though there's core opportunities that are always going to be there. And then lastly, as we just talked about, what are the things that you need? What are the tools? And identifying the right tools to be able to fulfill on the purpose that you've been called to do everywhere that you are given opportunity to do so. That's the LEAD framework in a nutshell with the seven steps. So we invite you to start by clarifying your purpose. Check out our site, wcompany.ca. On there, you'll see a free masterclass. I walk you through in that video how to fulfill your purpose and actually give you the steps to clarifying your purpose so that you can know why you're here. So I encourage you to do that and check it out. And as you have questions, reach out to us, wcompany.ca. So what do you want to say to wrap this up? If you had 30 seconds to tell somebody about fulfilling their purpose, what would you tell them?
I would say that it all starts with really clarifying what your purpose is. And then after that, it really is just about aligning your life and everything that you do, all the tools that you have and use and want to have, just aligning those to what your purpose actually is. Because what this all comes down to is living life on purpose. That's really what all this is about, is just discovering why you're actually here and then committing to living that out.
Leadership is hard, which is why the Valued Podcast is here for you. Realize your purpose and be the valued leader you need to be everywhere you go. So if today's episode blessed you in any way, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Then head over to wcompany.ca to see how our on-demand courses and live events teach you how to be valued in all your key relationships at home, work, in your community, and beyond. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get you valued everywhere you go.